Right, afternoon everyone. My name's Steve. We've got Fran from InBody and we've got Luke from Wattbike. So today's topic is going to be around sort of how performance insights can improve retention through better benchmarking. Bit of a mouthful there. And I think what the aim of today is really to simplify that, use some case studies and give you guys an opportunity to take it back to gyms or PTs or coaches, whichever, and utilise that better. So just from people in the room, are you guys all gym owners, coaches? What would you be, sir?
I run a business which takes members on a 9-month journey to a Swiss alpine adventure, gets them ready for it. So
that sounds good.
Retaining members, giving them a goal to motivate them, and they bring friends, which means you get referrals into the business.
Okay, awesome. Right, need to know more about that.
Yeah.
Everyone else here, gym owners, hands in the air. Got any coaches? Right, okay, cool. So we can go down the gym operator side of things. So, right, I guess what I want to ask you guys, and Fran, I'm going to come to you first, is what does that actually mean?
What, benchmarking for retention?
Yeah, the title of our topic.
Yeah.
In your words, simplify that for everyone here.
Okay, so I'm Francesca. I've been the director for InBody UK for 5 years, and I think I've gained a little bit of an insight and a little bit of knowledge in how this stuff works, okay? Retention is a word that is used a lot, marketed, business, sold, and quite often when we're selling InBodies or we're working with facilities that are buying InBodies, is that we're asked, is it a retention or is it a revenue tool, okay? For me, it is always a revenue focus. It should always be revenue focused. But today's topic is about how do we talk about benchmarking and making that a mandatory thing so that it drives organic retention. That's the terminology that I want to refer back to. And that is not thinking about retention as something that we need to do or add, but it is actually not every day. We do that every day, okay? Now, InBody is a machine, a device that collects data, and in particular for what we're talking about today is the muscle mass side of things, okay? And by monitoring your muscle, knowing, benchmarking your accurate muscle and monitoring that through your process, you're going to get retention through, organically through it working, through the process working. So for me, that's what it's about. It's about understanding that retention is something we should be just naturally doing. It should just be organically happening because we're doing it correct and we're using, as a supplier, we're using the tools that we've got within the business to benchmark muscle mass for me, and for Luke, that will be
for VO2 max
VO2
or
max.
CRF, and we'll touch upon that a little bit more, I suppose, throughout the talk. And then my insight on it, realistically, obviously we've talked about performance, and it's the first word in the title of the talk, but it's actually, what does that actually mean? We talk about performance, and obviously from a Wattbike perspective, you might see that as like elite performance, but how do we actually make that better from an everyday commercial product? Performance isn't just actually, can I perform on a football pitch, rugby pitch, whatever that is. It's, can I get out of bed and can I perform my everyday tasks effectively? So that's the first bit to that title, and what the talk's about is, can we perform on a daily basis? And then in terms of then that benchmarking and retention model, well, everyone should realistically be benchmarking something to show someone tangible goals. So if we can then benchmark, it's going to aid in that retention process and give them those touch points throughout that journey or process or customer journey, onboarding, whatever it is that you guys do, to retain them as a member for longer.
Awesome. So no, that's brilliant. And I think one of the things I want to go back to, and guys, will be 3 or 4 key areas we go through within the talk here and conversation. But from your guys' perspective at the moment, what would you say, for the guys listening, what are the gold standard? What is the gold standard of retention and utilising that benchmarking? Like, you guys work with multiple gyms, sites, everything. What are you seeing in the market that these guys could learn from?
As running a business as well, I think there are 2 things I think that you need to get right always. One is an emotive goal, and the other is a physical. Okay, so the emotive part of that is the experience, the journey, the experience that the customer goes on, creating a good experience. You create a good experience, that's the emotive part of that, and then the physical is actually providing something that works. So actually result driven. And if you can hit both an emotive and a physical, i.e. an experience and something that works, you will automatically, organically retain people, okay? If you get either one of those wrong, it doesn't work. And look, I run a business, I run a team of people. And if we look at the business that I'm running last year, 1.6 million came from existing customers, okay? That's just me as running as a business director. So I understand what it is to do that, and we have focused on that experience that they're going through with InBody when they're buying an InBody and how it's being implemented, how they're training, to the actual product physically working for their business, okay? And that's what you need to do. For me, we buy in emotively, sorry, okay? We have to emotively tick those boxes. We have to want to be there, okay? We have to enjoy being there. And then we have to have, like Luke says, something that's result-driven that shows it works. And if you can show it works, then we can show improvement, and they're enjoying that process, you will get organic retention anyway. And it isn't something that we need to think about, that we need to buy or focus on. It will just naturally happen. Okay, so to me, that's what. Yep.
Yeah. And then you mentioned that gold standard. What we're looking at doing is, everyone's talking about the word longevity at the minute in the industry. So it's how can we actually make that a simpler term for the consumer? That's then through benchmarking and then aiding that retention. So that gold standard is someone that, if the two best predictors are longevity, one being VO2 max and the second one being muscle mass from a body composition perspective, are the things that are going to actually make you live longer. And we start to talk about that, but you don't have to explain the science behind it. You benchmark it and then make it better through the programming or whatever it is that you guys are doing from a facilities perspective to make that better. So the gold standard is we need to look at muscle mass and we need to improve that muscle mass. We need to benchmark VO2 max, through however that is, whether that's them coming in with a wearable. I'm not saying you need to use a Wattbike from that perspective, because an Apple Watch, a Whoop, whatever, has a VO2 max on it now, but us as the operators need to then still explain that to the consumer. It's great that they'll come in and go, well, this is VO2 max. What is it? I don't, again, need to explain the science. You just need to explain that if this gets better by 1 milliliter, you will live an extra 45 days on this planet. And it's that simple. So that's the gold standards. We need to benchmark muscle mass, VO2 max, two best predictors of longevity, program from that, 6-week block, end of that block, we're going to do it again, and then guess what, if it's worked, you retain them as a member.
I was going to say there, Luke, actually, can we dig a bit deeper into, are there anything you've seen from gyms that actually what they're doing, how they're onboarding, what they're doing, the benchmark at the start and how it's working through? You guys got any examples or anything that's really working well, without maybe mentioning names, just broadly what's really working?
Mm-hmm. There's a company that we both deal with who have an onboarding product where there's 3 different tiers to it, and effectively as part of kind of onboarding and creating leads for their coaches, body composition is a part of that at the start, and body composition is a part of that at the end. And then we've just introduced VO2 max testing with the Wattbike from a retention, but actually also to convert it to a lead for coaching. So it's actually done as part of contracted hours to perform this, give them the coach a lead, show them their plan for 4 weeks, and then retest at the end of that from a body composition and VO2 max perspective, to then convert that to either a client or keep them longer as a member. And
it's important that you know, that group that we're talking about now market that on a retention way and do it really well as well, actually. So it's that they've focused so much on introducing those product services, those benchmarks at the very beginning, and really that onboarding is so important when you're talking about health data. It's so important that they've done it so well that now they can drive that as a revenue stream as well and upgrade that, and the data is really impressive. And you know, I'm going to keep going back to my own business. The proof is there that we're doing it well because we've got existing clients that are buying upgrade, not just buying new devices, but buying accompanying products or buying additional training just by, you know, training on the way to use the products properly. Making sure training is such a big part of this, is making sure that education, and you should be pushing back on your suppliers for your education. We know that education is really difficult for people who own gyms and are running gyms. It's really difficult to try and get the education up when we're talking about health data. Push back on your suppliers for that. We're educating those staff. They are just, you know, bringing that terminology, the correct language in there, and they're able to retain those customers and then actually market that for a revenue as well. It's really, really important.
I guess that's a cultural fit nowadays, isn't it?
They win. They're the winners. Yeah.
Yeah, it's embedded.
Yeah.
Okay, and what I want to do now is looking at the title. It says performance metrics. Now, probably every day in work, a lot of people talk about performance, but my view, and speaking to a number of people, is performance in fitness has almost become like that elite term for those people that want to get on a podium at High Rocks or something like that. Whereas I know we've spoken quite a bit, haven't we, of performance actually doesn't mean just that. Performance is for everybody. So from your guys' perspective, let's talk a bit more about performance metrics and what that means to you. So Fran, you mentioned about sort of muscle mass, Luke, you've mentioned about VO2, but we've talked as well, haven't we, around simplifying what those performance metrics are. Mm. From both of your perspectives, what are those performance metrics, and simplify them?
Mm-hmm. So I'll obviously talk about VO2 max realistically, because it's the best predictor of longevity from any talks. If you've been to Ollie Patrick's talk, I'm assuming he probably talked about that today. Anything that you hear on podcasts, VO2 max is the best predictor of longevity, simple as that. In terms of then from a performance perspective, like I've already touched upon, is we don't need to explain the science behind it, but effectively increasing that figure is going to help someone live longer. But then what we're talking about performance is actually, if I'm getting out of bed, can I just perform from a quality of lifestyle perspective on a daily basis? It's not about being elite and being a performance athlete. It's can I perform the everyday tasks well to an effective standard that I want to be able to. And
I guess that's where longevity is that buzzword almost in the industry, but actually is longevity the right thing, or do we want to live a good life? Mm-hmm. That's also really important, isn't it? And by having better muscle mass and better VO2 or cardiorespiratory fitness, because
the actual measurement is that VO2 max, and everyone's using VO2 max as the term, but it's actually your cardiorespiratory fitness. It's just how healthy your heart and lungs are and how they're effectively sending oxygen to your muscle mass. It's great that we can build muscle mass. If you've built that muscle mass, if you've not got a good cardiorespiratory fitness, it's going to be very short-lived in terms of that muscle mass that you've got, and vice versa. If you've got a great cardiorespiratory fitness without muscle mass, we can start to talk about metrics and doing fact checks, but past 65, the highest cause of accidental death is falling over. It's frailty, so we need to build muscle mass from that perspective. The highest cause of death currently is cardiovascular disease, so you need a better cardiorespiratory fitness. Everyone's talking about VO2 max, which could be a high barrier to entry, but if we start to talk about heart and lung health, that's when we start to talk about cardiorespiratory fitness, which is measured by VO2 max.
And the two elevate together. VO2 max and quality muscle mass elevate together. They need to in order to function. That's where the body works. So you're right in what you're saying. I think going back to performance for me, and again this buzzword longevity. Longevity simply means long age. Okay. There's no real mention in there of like how healthy you are as you age. It really is just about living longer. And I think what when we think about the word longevity, and Luke is right in what he's saying, Ollie Patrick is talking about those two metrics, which just happen to be, the businesses that we're in as well. But when we talk about longevity, it really should be about aging well, aging healthily, and not just living longer, okay? Who wants to live forever? Well, no one if they are in poor health, okay? So by attacking these two things, muscle mass, just speak a little bit about that. We all know the benefits of muscle mass. Yes, it's from a strength perspective. Luke's right in what he says. One of the top killers still is accidents, and if you're over 65, trips and falls, you're very unlikely if you do have a fall and you do injure yourself, but past the age of 65, it really is a downward spiral from there, really. Say what you want about the healthcare system, whatever at the moment, but it's really, we're trying to avoid that. But also muscle cell plays a massive benefit later on in disease, or in T-cell fatigue, coping with disease later on in life. So there's so many beautiful benefits to having muscle in the body, and good quality muscle as well. Yes, from a strength perspective, but from a health benefit, from an immunity benefit, from the ability that if you do, and unfortunately quite a few people in this room, 1/3 of the people in this room will go on to suffer some form of disease later on, you have got more chance of recovering from that with treatment. I will say with treatment, those two go together. But if you have muscle cell in your body, good muscle cell in your body, okay, the data is there, we know that. So it really is about keeping muscle mass as long as possible, and benchmarking that. We have to know where to start. It is about onboarding your customers and clients into your business and making this mandatory. This is mandatory data that we want to know, and then we can improve from there. And again, I totally agree. Performance, we think this is some sort of high esteem, on performance in sport or performance in fitness, but actually performance is in everything we do. It's how we perform the task, it's how we perform that. And what we're trying to do is benchmark so we can get where we are now so that we can improve, okay? And those improves be improve, and that might actually be from a muscle perspective, which is my goal, is not to gain more muscle, but just not to lose muscle as we age, okay? As we go into our longevity phase of long age, is about maintenance of muscle. Okay, so that's really, really important. But the two work together. VO2 max and muscle mass elevate together. Okay, so getting somebody focused on those two things right from the start. That's what our industry should be doing, focusing on those two things right from the start, and make that a focus for them. That is where their fitness, where their health, where their training. That's what they're aiming for. It is, yes, to lose weight, and it is to look good and all those things, but from a health perspective, those internal health markers are super, super important. They should be embedded in all of your clients and all of your customers. That is where we're going. It is absolutely where we're going. Maintaining that muscle mass, increasing that muscle mass, and increasing your cardiovascular respiratory fitness as well.
In fact, from that perspective, and Luke, how, using the data that you're getting from muscle mass and CRF, how can the gym owners and guys use that to motivate members?
Motivation-wise, we've got to educate them on whether it's a favourable or unfavourable result in the first place. If someone can't complete a 6-minute test on a Wattbike health span score, they can't do a brisk walk, which obviously, as we all know, is pretty bad. Realistically, we're looking for them to do 6 minutes, but it's more, touching upon terminology, we don't want to make it invasive. So the whole thing is that both of the tests that you can do is non-invasive, low barrier to entry. Everyone can jump on a bike and turn over the legs, unless they've obviously not got legs or disability-wise, but most people can get on a bike and turn over the legs for at least 6 minutes to get a VO2 max score. Non-invasive-wise, we're not having to put gas chamber on, and the test is 2% or within 2% of gas chamber that we've got on the bike. So again, it's an available product, non-invasive, low barrier to entry. Everyone can do it. And again, I kind of come back to that performance aspect. Everyone would probably see a Wattbike as a performance product, or where Wattbike have positioned themselves in marketing and through elite sport and who we supply to, you see it as the bikes go through for a performance. How do you make that a low barrier to entry? Well, actually, everyone and anyone should jump on a Wattbike to prime for a workout, a lower body workout, because of the 10-minute warm-up compared to jumping on an upright life fitness cycle. Because you can prime effectively through scientific backed research on a 10-minute warm-up. It's all backed through science, but it's actually a usable metric for us to benchmark, and everyone should know about it for living longer.
And how often should someone be benchmarking?
We say at least 6 to 8 weeks. So with the InBody, you might say something slightly different, but 6 to 8 weeks show a tangible change in goal. So you don't necessarily need to do any cardio on the Wattbike. You do the benchmarking at the start of a 6 to 8 week block, and the benchmarking at the end of that block to show that it's increased, whether that's even only through doing weights, because your cardiorespiratory fitness should increase. If you've got someone that's going to be completely sedentary over an 8-week block and they've been doing weights, that's going to increase because they're exercising. It's not about this whole zone 4, zone 5 training anymore. Everyone's banging on about zone 2 runs and increasing VO2 max through that. There is programs that on the bike to do that, but you don't necessarily need to use the Wattbike for that training. You could use it to benchmark at the start, benchmark at the end, and apply what's for zone 2 training on the ski area from a high rocks perspective, or even if it's just people that enjoy rowing, but actually convert that to then other pieces of equipment in your facility as well. And that's how then it's actually encouraging them, because it's not just a test, it's not just here's the figure, what do I do with it, it's then we want you to improve this to live longer, and actually you can go and use whatever pieces of kit in the facility, and I'll program that for you as a coach or as a facility. If you stay for longer, it will increase.
I think for me as well, I think InBody is slightly different in what Wattbike and Luke do, is that the bike is a tool which you can benchmark and then use to improve. Whereas InBody is not providing, body composition scanners they're not providing the actual task to improve. They are scanning, giving you where you are at that point, and then scan again. And look, these things can be scary. They can be scary. Let's think about what we've just said about performance. It's not high performance. Everybody should be doing it. And taking a body composition scanner, or doing a test, even just the word test, by calling it a test, makes it scary for some people. So it feels like they're being put against each other or in some form of competition. So for InBody, we say every 4 weeks. That's because it's a water scanner, but we don't have any impact in between. We don't have a tool that we can, it's not a tool that can actually improve your muscle mass score or improve your body fat percentage. That is all down on you guys and the actual person taking to do that. So it's just slightly different, yeah.
Just going to ask the guys in the room, with what we're talking about here and the guys are saying, have you got products in gyms at the moment? Like, are the terminology we're talking about VO2, are you using terms VO2 or is it CRF? You're nodding, got
VO2 and the body mass, the muscle mass.
Muscle mass, yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your customers, do they understand those?
I'm talking about the studios that I work with.
Yeah, okay.
All of them do,
Yeah.
yeah.
What about?
Less VO2 max and more the tools for measuring muscle mass.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, because one of the things I want to talk about, and we've touched on it, is about the terminology and the language and what the industry is saying versus what members will probably understand. I know we've spoken, Luke, and VO2 max has been talked about, but you talk about CRF.
Yeah.
Fran, body composition, body fat, actually, it's muscle mass and body composition. So what's the right terminology as well now that the guys in the room should maybe be utilising with members to get that understanding?
I think language is really important. I think we'll probably approach this in a different way. I'll always come back to very basic language, simplifying the data. I will always fight for, say, the smaller person, and so we need to make sure that it's a terminology and a language that they understand, okay, and bring it back to a specific benefit for them. This is a prime example. It's just when we do that, we need to still educate that terminology as well. I spend a lot of money on marketing. Unless I put the word fat in those hits, and if we don't get it, I can see, Lucy at the back and see you can smile as well. But we're obsessed with fat. We're obsessed with the word fat, okay? We used to be obsessed with weight. We're now obsessed with fat, and what we need to be obsessed with is muscle, okay? But they're really simple terms. We don't need to go too much into that, too much into the medical jargon. Or we could do, these are medical device, InBody's a medical device, we could go all the way, but we need to keep it very simple so what people understand that we're talking about muscle mass, we're talking about fluid, we're talking where that fluid is, we're talking about where that fat is in their body, and actually make that relevant to them. We have a real problem, I think we have a real problem within our industry of overcomplicating things, maybe from a past tense of trying to elevate status and make it more marketable or sellable or seem more difficult. But look, let's just break it down here. Those of us that are a bit older, you cardio train, you strength train, and you stretch. And that's essentially what we're saying here, okay? You strength train, you cardio train. Nothing has changed. The wheel is still the wheel. Yes, there's a few more spokes on it that's a bit more colourful and it might be a bit bigger and whatever, but it is still the wheel. And ultimately, biologically, your body is still the same, okay? So keep it simple. Do not overcomplicate it. You don't need to. The products that... InBody and body composition products, they do the work for you, okay? It's simplifying this data so that it's relevant for people, and language is so important. And my pet hate, I've lots of pet hates, but my pet hate is, going and watching someone deliver training and just making it, just bamboozling it. Great word, bamboozling it, making it so complicated, and the customers, have no idea when they're having these results delivered to them. They have no idea what it means. At the end of the day, but what does that mean? Okay, you've got to know your audience. Use simple language. Don't overcomplicate it. Always come back, and I will always say this: come back to basics and do the basics well. All right, that's really, really important. For me, when we are talking about muscle mass, why muscle mass is important, explaining why muscle mass is important. InBody does a lot of other things, but fundamentally for what we're talking about today, that is the benchmarking thing from a performance perspective, and how well they maintain that muscle, how well they train that muscle, how well that muscle functions for them in their life and what they need it to do, okay? Language is, for me, is simplification.
I suppose we're getting new members, different types of members into gyms as well, aren't we? So that language is critical, that they're not scared as well.
Absolutely, yeah. These tools it's a very scary thing to ask someone to stand on that, like run a test or, perform a test on a bike. It can be very scary for people. We always talk about how do we engage more people, in the gym, or how, especially when we're talking about retention, how do we retain it? You will always retain those people that will always be there anyway, okay? So you need to try and focus on the rest of those people that are coming in and out of your facilities, the fickle gym member that you will, bring in. How do we build connection? And this is that's actually a really good point there, is that these are tools to create touch points with your customers, okay? These are tools to create and start conversations with your customers and be able to make this benchmark data that we're talking about, which is two relatively simple things that should be in everyday focus, to make that relevant to them. Just, of course you can, yes.
So, in the course of this is quite a big international healthcare company, this is the time for it, and we would pull our hair out because we all knew, all of our customers knew that, next time, can you do a bit of exercise and you don't get a weight, quite frankly, you're going to, get a little pretty healthy on that, by and large. But
Take out genetics, but yeah.
yeah. But we don't. We know that they don't. It's a bit like, I love the tools that you've got, they are a really important part of the fabric of doing things right. I can clearly see that. But even if you explain what's the muscle mass, so like muscle making, or you explain the benefits of having a good aerobic fitness, mass, whatever, how do you actually get them to engage with it? Because it's only going to go longer, there's a long way out from this.
Totally agree.
So you've got to engage with them in the immediate and short term, which is quite tough to try and do this. But genuinely, how do you start what are the best ways to get them exploiting those amazing tools that you guys have got?
So we build it into that onboarding product realistically, and how we're either looking to sell people or retain a member. But for me, Fran's kind of touched point there, it's the touch points that you get with that member, then you actually have those conversations with them, because the hardest part from a retention perspective normally is actually speaking to the client. There was a show I was at recently called the Retention Convention. It was Paul Bedford who hosted that, and they said that the hardest part and keeping a member longer is to do with a meaningful conversation. But a meaningful conversation was hello, how's your day been, and as they're walking out, how's your session, when I'm going to see you next. It's not a massive touch point. The thing is with the product is, from a body composition perspective, they might be 90 seconds. You can go through, if you then accompany that by sitting on the bike for 10 minutes, you can do all of the park use stuff, all of the questions while they're on the bike and then engaging with that customer. So you can ask the questions there. What is it they're looking to get out of the gym? Where in the gym are they looking to use? What are you looking to improve? Smoke? Do you drink? How do we? And then have those meaningful conversations for such a short period of time, so a longer period of time than hello, how's your day been? And that's where you gauge where that member is from a psychological perspective, and try and change those habits there by educating them with those small snippets. Not everyone's going to listen to us at the end of the day. My missus is the worst part about the industry in general. No, because she doesn't enjoy going to the gym.
My ex-missus.
How do you get that person in the gym when they do not want to step foot in the gym? I've got a garage gym. Won't step foot in the garage, does not enjoy training, so I bought a walking pad to get her steps in for the day. Doesn't get used very often. That's the exact barrier that we've got from an operator perspective. How do you get that person in the gym in the first place before even telling them about having a good muscle mass, before telling them you need to improve your VO2 max? And I get exactly where you're coming from, but it's just being able to actually get in front of the member in the first place, giving them a little snippet on that, and hope that they listen to what you're saying.
Fran, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to go backwards and say go back to exactly what I've said about get the basics right and do it properly. So there are really two reasons why somebody suddenly focuses on my health, okay, realistically. And I want to go back to the emotive, what I said at the beginning about it's an emotive, okay, and physical. Now, again, it's the same about why people engage. You've got to look at why people engage. It's either because they have got sick, or they have had a scare, okay, themselves, or they've had an emotion, and that's the physical, okay, and I'm in that space now, so I know I'm in this industry, and all of a sudden have a scare and go, shit, I need to sort myself out, excuse the French, but yeah, I need to sort myself out. That's the first reason why. Then the other is an emotive reason, so it's happened to someone else or something else within their structure or their family unit or friendship unit that makes them think, makes them emotively think, oh, it's time for me to focus. So always go back to those 2 points. I'll always pull it back to that. But the biggest one to get someone to engage is that emotive. And Luke's right in what he's saying, creating those touch points, and you'll make it personable. Okay, it's the emotive. You've got to get somebody emotively attached if they haven't had a physical response. And that's really important. That's the only way they're going to, because look, we're trying to get people to invest in themselves here. Yeah, okay, obviously we want them to invest their money with you and put real value on the fact that their health is worth the cost, but they've got to invest in what they're doing, they've got to invest in themselves, they've really got to advocate themselves. Okay, we always say, and I think, you know, the other composition companies in the room say the same, that we're always empowering people to take control of their own health. Okay, if you do that, and that is emotive, driven by an emotive response to want to do that, or a physical, and that physical is the need. Okay, and I think that's it. Take it right back to the simple and always start at the beginning. Luke's right, it's those touch points, it's that communication. But where is that coming from? In order for someone to advocate their health, to really think about, when I'm 65, I'm not going to be able to do this. Because look, until we get into our 40s or 50s, and then we realise, shit, we should have stretched. We should have done anything. Oh God, I can't run any. You know what I mean? My joints. Until you get to that point, that's the physical. That's the physical at that point. If you've been attacked, if you've been touched by something emotive, you've lost a parent or something, or you've got a child or a friend or whatever, or then that's the emotive. I think I'll just pull it back very, very quickly to say, for me, mine was my child. My child got sick, and suddenly I went, shit, I need to sort myself out. Drank heavily, I'm a past smoker, all this, whatever. And suddenly, when I was faced with mortality, and I realised that, okay, I need to survive in order to be there for, then you suddenly change. That's the motive. That's not physically happened to me, that is an emotive. So I think that's what you've got to try and think about is, we've got to create those touch points. We've got to maybe get inside people's heads a little bit. We've got to think about this from an emotive response. And then you can go in with the physicals. Yeah.
The thing is there's a
Hope that answers that.
Yeah. There's a barrier. The first barrier is they've actually stepped foot into the facility,
yeah.
which is the hardest part for some of the members. And it's then our job to find out why. And then that's when you ask those questions, and then we can educate from there. So it's the why they're there, because there's a reason. If we find out that reason, then we can point them in that direction.
That's it. The why is the emotive. The how we're going to do that is the physical. Absolutely. But yeah, you're right. You have to start at that point. Most people, will come and we talk about onboarding, we talk about new members, but we've not got to forget our existing. Okay, people's lives change and their goals change all the time as well. So that constant touch points. I know that your business, you're doing these plans, and obviously you're getting that onboarding all the time, but for those that are existing members talking about retention, always know that people's lives change, people's goals change, people's needs change all the time. You've got to still, you've got to create those points where you know about those and you're able to adapt what you're offering, but all the time making sure that you're benchmarking those things that we need to, which are the basis of what we're talking about today.
What, Fran and Luke, what about the term progress? Because we haven't really talked about that, but from a point of, like you said there, Fran, not just new members onboarding, but existing members maybe, or even new. Think about it, like if people progress, if they see better, their benchmarking is getting better, motivation comes and all these things. Where does that, like the term progress, does that come into your guys'
That's where that retention piece is, I suppose, because it's empowering the member. So if we empower the member with that, and they have made progress, and then you've given them that kind of almost dopamine, it's better.
People love to win.
Psychologically,
People like
they're
to
seeing
win.
something, and they've got belief, they're going to maintain it.
They're more likely to then carry on those behaviours than go, oh, I've got to that, oh, no, I'm going to stop. It's not the case from a body composition or VO2 max perspective that it's only going to either maintain or get better, and if it gets worse again, it needs to go back in the right direction and get back to where it used to be.
And there's the plateau, I think, as well with progress as well. You will get to a point where you will need to switch things up. When we look at our programme, shall we say, we are never going past 12 weeks. That 12-week allows the customer to scan and test within those times. We're always creating that engagement, re-engagement with the customer at 12 weeks. Okay, always doing that, because progress does plateau. People do need to switch up, they need to change, the body's clever, it gets to a point and it goes, cool, we're here, and it needs that next level of stress, that change to do that. So, for me, progress. Yeah.
I suppose the other thing is though as well is you might get some clients that come in with astronomical goals and it's almost talking
All
about
clients,
a little bit.
yeah.
That's the thing. So it's like from a body composition, you might want to lose 20 kilos of fat mass or improve their VO2 max by, I don't know, 20 millilitres or something in such a short space of time. It's not going to happen, and again, it's on us to go, no, here's the smaller, tangible goals, let's lose a kilo of body fat mass within the space of 4 weeks.
That's a really good point.
And then actually let's increase your VO2 max by maybe 2 or 3 millilitres in the space of 6 to 8 weeks. And then that's those small progressive goals, extra touch points, and then again for you to still touch base with those members.
Small, achievable, and that's the key word, small, achievable markers so that people are consistently winning in there, and that's progress.
Yeah.
Because, like we say, these things are scary to get on, but the first, scans or whatever, it's the scan where it shows actually things have got worse that you need to be able to. That's a different conversation, because the next thing is why. That customer's saying, well, why? Why has that happened? So, small, achievable markers is a much better way of doing it. And everybody walks in, and actually no, they don't, I think, but most people have a goal of where they want to be, but actually breaking it down, and this probably takes us nicely onto aesthetics, which I think we should look at, but most people have a reason why they're there, and what some people will tell you what their reason is. That's not their reason. Actually, their reason is they're going on holiday and they look better, or they're going to a wedding, and that's okay. That's absolutely fine that it should be that, okay? So it's knowing that's a small, achievable marker that creates a win, that creates an emotive response at the end of that to say, I did that, and that brings motivation and progress. Yeah.
You've got there is, without doubt, within the industry, aesthetics have been there. We've talked about longevity, all that. So there's different people coming for different reasons, aren't there? That's what they want to see. We've got 5 or 10 minutes left. I want to ask you guys now, put you on the spot. If you had your own gym, if you were a launch gym, what would your retention focus be around performance insights? Taking it back to our title. Give the guys an insight of what you would do for a new member and an existing member.
Well, the journey that we've talked about, realistically, I'm looking. Small group PT is such a massive thing at the minute in terms of if I was looking to open a facility, I'd look at small group PT because I can actually coach someone in an effective manner, be a viable business strategy, but actually what I'm going to do is at the start of the block is I'm going to do the benchmarking. So it's going to be a body composition, it's going to be a VO2 max test. It's probably actually not going to involve much.
Is there anything else you'd include?
No, because how much then becomes too much data. You've got
I guess that's a problem now with everyone
with vertical jump, and there's different things that we can attach to the barbells, like Alico added there's bits to the barbell. It's very much that's where it's the 1%, the elite people. That's not who we're going to be, unless it's obviously a performance, actual elite performance model. That's not who we're coaching or seeing in our facilities. So it's a case of I only need to give them 2 tangible goals, and then it's then around the program that I can do around that to show a viable change. So through that program, and then at the end of the 6 to 8 week block, I'm retesting. And that's the model, realistically. We don't want to overcomplicate it with too much data, too much science, anything like that. And there's other things, if you did want to incorporate in, you can start to look at mobility through the e-gym setups and all that kind of stuff. There's even apps on your phone that you can look at mobility now as well. But we don't want to overcomplicate it. We can, again, educate ourselves to explain that to the member, but I don't necessarily need to do that from a facility perspective. Movement assessment may be something that we could look at as well, but it's the amount of time that takes. If we can do body composition that takes 60 to 90 seconds, 10-minute tops to warm them up on a bike, and then it's actually then we don't need to do that for another 6 weeks, and then that's the model.
Fran?
I'm probably really not qualified enough to answer that question, if I'm honest, Steve. I put an InBody in. I put some kit in for what bike I'd create. I definitely, if it was my business, and look, I probably had a choice to open clinics and facilities at the very beginning of this journey, and I chose to go down to actually sell InBodies instead, and probably should have gone the other way, probably would have made more money, but yeah, I would definitely be focused on the well-being side of people as well. I think that's the mental well-being. I think that's very very important. I would benchmark what I would consider the basics and the essentials, which are what we're talking about today. And I would bring in a motive. I don't know if you're getting that through me, but I'm very motive driven, but I think everything is about motive, and I would bring that happiness into that as well, and making sure that we create a nice environment. I probably wouldn't have a very big facility. I'd keep it quite small. It probably wouldn't make me a lot of money. But I'd have happy clientele and no one would leave in an ideal world. And we'd provide a service where people want to go and genuinely would improve their health whilst having a nice time and training. Yeah, so that was a really shit answer.
Nice dream that you had.
And that's why I'm not a gym owner. But yeah.
We've got 5 or 10 minutes. Has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask the guys? Go for it.
First, the fan. We have an InBody, we have a gym, we have an InBody system.
Oh God,
yeah, okay, it takes about 90 seconds to do it, but it takes a bit more longer to actually assess after the results.
Absolutely.
And if me and someone else does results, we could sort of explain it differently. So but I'm interested in longevity, especially when you mentioned 65. I'm 65 next year. So I'm looking at longevity. There's a grip sort of thing.
Grip strength,
yeah. You know? So I'm thinking of whether we invest in that.
You absolutely should, yes.
We'll move on.
Absolutely. Oh, have you had the chat? Yeah, this is Nick.
We're always smoking.
Yeah, there's a great, let's just look at longevity, and longevity and grip strength. This is really interesting, and I'm actually writing a piece at the moment about grip strength and longevity, because, again, you could Google, what is good for longevity, and everyone say, yes, longevity, grip strength is a great benchmark. It's a great way to assess, to assess longevity as a longevity marker. Then ask anybody in this room why. Nobody would know. Nobody would actually know why. So I'm not going to go too much in it because we've got 5 minutes. But if we look at the testing of function of muscle, okay, so we know what muscle mass is in the body, but function of muscle. And if we look at other providers that are in there, they will have an assessment of how to look at that function of muscle, how well that muscle performs. That could be a squat test, or that could be whatever that is. The reason why grip strength is so good is it does utilise, don't quote me on this, around 53, 54 muscles in the hand and the 30 in the forearm. When this is in a position and you do this, it is activating quite a large amount of muscle. When it's both left and right, I believe it's around 16% of that muscle in a movement that most people can do into their entire aging population. Yeah, and that's why, okay, essentially that's why.
It's the most researched parameter for strength and grip, and the same with leg strength as well. So it's a great parameter to introduce, where it's quite a simple one to explain, but then we start talking about sarcopenia and that kind of thing to your everyday demographic.
Which has, recently just been diagnosed as an official disease, sarcopenia, which we're seeing in a lot younger.
130 for a male and 20 for a female.
It's a lot younger now, yeah.
Classed as sarcopenic, and all the data, there's millions of research around hand grip strength, and it just aids in that journey again and adding that slightly extra data point. And the same from a Wattbike perspective. If you're looking at hand grip strength, how are you then looking at leg strength, other than potentially doing 1 rep max testing, which takes 20 to 30 minutes to perform a 1 rep max squat, or start to look at deadlift. Through a 6-second test on a Wattbike, you can give them a peak power per kilo or an absolute peak power, and show them the leg strength, which has again a massive correlation with 1 rep max testing, and you've done that within 6 seconds. So there's 2 things there in terms of hand grip strength and leg strength as well. That's another data point that we can actually utilise from different devices.
And from a medical perspective, just if you want to continue this conversation afterwards, the bicep is a really interesting muscle that we look at when muscle starts to waste. Yeah, so from a medical terminology point of view. Yeah, and so as that's lower than that, that's why it's another reason why. But yeah, I'm actually writing a piece on hand grip, because if you, like I say, try and Google and try and find out information, everyone knows it's a longevity marker, but no one really understands why. So again, go back to those basics and understand the function of actually doing that movement, doing it correctly. Both arms as well, the percentage of muscle that you're using, and we can get our, and you're probably a very healthy 65, probably not the normal classification of what we're talking about from a trip and fall perspective, but most people, even if they're chair bound, or can do a grip strength, so really it's the ease of use as well,
Just one of the questions, some people don't want to get on the InBody.
Most people don't want to get on the InBody.
We don't do a VO2 max. Normally don't know how many gyms do that.
Not really anyone. It's your performance market again, where you see the gas chamber, you go to your universities and you pay £250 for doing sweat analysis and all that kind of stuff. But everyone's starting to talk about it. I say everyone's starting to talk about it. The industry's starting to talk about it. How do we make that mainstream? Because if everyone's saying it's the best predictor of longevity, why is it not being spoken about outside of the industry?
Yeah.
So we've got an onus on ourselves and Wattbike be hopefully trying to be that main focus where it is low barrier to entry, non-invasive, not having to go and having X amount of ECGs, wires stuck to you in a claustrophobic performance mask put on and going to exhaustion. It's sub-maximal, so it's an RP of 7. And we're actually giving them a clinically validated, scientifically backed metric.
And that's the experience of it being different with the mask on their face and all that stuff, you know, that's
What was your question? What was the
The
second?
question is, you know,
Luke likes us to talk, so I just wanted to double check.
That's why
what the
Steve's
question was.
here.
I'm considering whether I should invest in sort of like the VO2 max area, and then if I do invest in it, I don't know what percentage of my clients would want to do it.
Yeah.
I think I'll invest in that. I'm not going to get much. I might do it myself, but you know, like my clients, this might be wasting money for retention, etc.
Sure. Yeah. I think the answer to that more than anything is you don't necessarily tell them they're doing a test, so to speak. It could be part of the normal, but it's just some benchmarking at the start of block, or if it's small group meeting or whatever that is, do it in their own time. Here's your warm up for this week. Program that as their warm up. Don't know actually that they're doing a test, but then we can still actually go, we've actually done this.
And it's the same with
InBody. I always used to kind of used to be aware that you're burning InBody and you might not be told what you want to hear, but actually the minute you watch someone else do it, there's always someone else like, what was that? Now I want to do it because I'm doing this and this. As I say, we get more people doing it. Those people are aware to start with. The people who have done it, talking about it. Oh, this is my story. This is what I've got from a longevity perspective. This was a really good marker versus someone that wasn't. I want to get to where they are, and that's how it's trying to empower them to do it again. And those people who don't want to do it, actually start listening to the people that have done it and gone, I should be doing it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Good. Gentlemen.